pro-life protections, why Democrats on Capitol Hill may be changing their mind about funding a bill that supports the unborn. Targeted attack. Government officials in Tehran react after gas stations are suddenly forced to close. Reaching out. A report from Rome on how the Vatican is helping disadvantaged people improve their health. And making progress. An update on the Queen of England after she was briefly hospitalized last week. On EWTN News Nightly for Tuesday, October 26th, 2021. Thank you so much for being with us tonight on this feast of St. Alfred the Great. I'm Tracy Sable. We begin tonight on Capitol Hill and the negotiations on the multi-trillion-dollar reconciliation package. Democrats are mulling over its price tag and what items should be left out or pared down. But for the first time, House Democratic leadership says a provision may be included that would prevent taxpayer dollars from being used to pay for abortions. Capitol Hill correspondent Eric Rosales reports.
This is a major change in public policy if it does happen. Several months ago, I asked Democratic Caucus Chair Hakeem Jeffries about the Hyde Amendment and how it relates to the reconciliation bill. He told me that a woman's right to choose was a non-starter and it would not be included. Well, today when I asked him, he backed away from that threat. Right now, the Helms and Hyde Amendment are not included in the reconciliation bill, yet Democratic Senator Joe Manchin says that it's a non-starter. Is this something that the House would consider to put into the bill as an amendment?
We haven't had a conversation about that. Nothing is agreed upon until everything is agreed upon. We'll see what the final agreement looks like.
Last month, Catholic Senator Joe Manchin said an expansion of Medicaid that Democrats were seeking to pass as part of the reconciliation bill must include the Hyde Amendment to get his support. I asked the West Virginia senator about Hyde.
I support the Hyde. I've always supported the Hyde Amendment. I don't know how many times I have to tell you that.
Under the Hyde Amendment, Medicaid and other federal programs are prohibited from covering abortion expenses. Government spending bills have included the stipulation since 1976.
It's a top priority of ours that the Hyde protections that go back to the 1970s stay in law for any spending. Taxpayer money should not be used to fund abortion. That had always been a bipartisan initiative.
Bills have been routinely passed with Hyde Amendment language for years, but now doing so has grown more controversial among Democrats. The new debate comes as many Democrats worry over access to abortion, given state laws limiting the practice. Texas recently approved a law banning abortions as soon as 6 weeks into the pregnancy. Republicans tell me even if someone is not pro-life, tax dollars should not pay for abortions.
I think it would be a fundamental change in policy where taxpayer dollars are now allocated to abortion, and millions of Americans find that morally inappropriate.
It's important to note that the reconciliation bill has not been finalized. Democrats hope to have a framework by the end of this week. From the Capitol, Eric Rosales, EWTN News Nightly.
Well, in the fight to prevent taxpayer funding of abortions, 11 states are joining a lawsuit by Ohio to prohibit abortion referrals by family clinics covered under the federal Title X law. New Biden administration regulations recently restored millions of federal dollars. Oklahoma's Supreme Court has temporarily blocked 3 pro-life laws that were scheduled to take effect next Monday. A lower court had previously blocked Oklahoma's heartbeat law. In all, 5 of the state's 9 new pro-life laws are under injunction while lawsuits proceed. The international community is denouncing the military coup in Sudan. The leading general claims the prime minister was taken to protect his safety during escalating tensions in that country. Meanwhile, pro-democracy protesters have erected barricades to block roads in the capital of Khartoum. The U.S. is condemning the takeover, as is the UN Secretary General. Both call for the immediate release of government officials who were seized. The Coast Guard in Greece says 3 girls and a woman have died at sea as part of a group trying to migrate from Turkey. Another 22 people seeking asylum were rescued near the Isle of Chios, leaving at least 1 person from the small boat still missing. A cyber attack in Iran has shut down gasoline stations across the country. Motorists were left stranded, unable to complete transactions at the pump with government-issued purchase cards. There is no claim of responsibility, but it is believed a group of hackers who targeted Iran's railroad system last summer may be involved. In a recent article for Newsweek, Gordon Chang writes China's hypersonic missile is testing the bounds of the Outer Space Treaty. He goes on to write China's hypersonic glide vehicle did not carry a live nuke, so it did not run afoul of the treaty. But Beijing's intent to violate the pact is clear. Hypersonic glide vehicles are designed, after all, to deliver nuclear weapons. And joining us now is Gordon Chang, author of The Coming Collapse of China and the Great U.S.-China Tech War. Gordon, great to see you. Great to have you on set.
Oh, well, this is terrific, Tracy. So thank you so much.
Absolutely. It's our pleasure. Let's talk a little bit more about that article that you wrote. I want to talk more about that treaty and the purpose of it.
You know, the Outer Space Treaty prevents weapons of mass destruction from being stationed in space, and that includes one full orbit of the Earth. Now, a hypersonic glide vehicle is designed to carry nuclear weapons. China's test last August was actually one full circuit of the globe, so that indicates China does intend to violate the Outer Space Treaty, and it's clear that the Chinese want to militarize space. We've seen this in a number of different ways. So the United States needs to start talking about this in public, because so far the Biden administration has been trying to sort of get by this, not talk about it.
Yeah, besides talking about it, Gordon, what other actions do you think should be taken?
Well, I think the United States should probably say, look, we're going to withdraw from the treaty. And the reason is we have to match what the Chinese do. This is type of technology which really just changes the game, because hypersonic glide vehicles travel at least 5 times the speed of sound. A hypersonic glide vehicle can drop down out of space. It can nuke an American city with almost no warning. This is technology we don't have. It would take us at least a half-decade to get there if we're trying, but we're not even trying to match the Chinese right now. I believe we need to get out of this treaty, which in any event, Tracy, is unenforceable.
Yeah, and Gordon, also here in Washington today, as you know, China came up as a topic in some congressional meetings with social media companies. TikTok in particular was asked about China and about its ties to the communist country. What more do we know about that?
Well, TikTok is owned by ByteDance, which is nominally private, but we also know that in China's top-down system, no company can violate a direct demand from the Communist Party. Also, there's something that 2017 national intelligence law requires every Chinese entity to spy if demanded. We know that China has been fooling around with the algorithm of TikTok that curates videos. In other words, the algorithm that determines what our kids see. And China's been using that for malicious purposes.
And also, let's talk a little bit more about the security threat that could pose.
Well, just to give you an example, Radio Free Asia reports that an intelligence unit of the People's Liberation Army actually based themselves in the now-closed Houston consulate, and from there they identified Americans likely to participate in violent protests, and then the Chinese military sent them videos via TikTok on how to riot. That's actually an act of war. So we see how China has been able to curate TikTok videos to get Americans to do what they want. That's called boosting the signal.
Yeah, and also speaking of security concerns, I understand the FCC voted today that China Telecom could no longer operate in the U.S. due to national security concerns. I'd like to get your reaction and talk to us a little bit more about that.
Well, that's a great thing. I mean, we need to make sure that China is not involved in our distribution of telecom, because, first of all, we can't do the same thing in China. So this is, first of all, just an issue of reciprocity. But going back to China's system, China can use this to surreptitiously take data from Americans, and we just need to stop that. So I'm glad the FCC voted this way. There have been a number of decisions that the FCC has taken recently to sort of protect the U.S. We need to go even further.
I want to talk about Afghanistan now. You know, we're hearing that it's a real possibility that Afghanistan could collapse, and really in the near future. What type of opportunity, so to speak, does that open up for China?
Well, China has established strong relations with the Taliban. This goes back before 9/11, continues after that, and China was supplying arms to the Taliban while it was conducting the insurgency, and those arms were used to kill Americans and NATO troops. So we know that Beijing and the Taliban are very closely tied. Right now, Afghanistan is going to go into perhaps the world's worst humanitarian crisis. Beijing is saying that the United States has a responsibility. No, we were the victims here. We went into Afghanistan because the Taliban was using it as providing a refuge for al-Qaeda. China has destabilized Afghanistan. If anyone's got to take care of Afghanistan, it's Beijing, not Washington.
We have about a minute left, Gordon. I know there's so much that we could talk about when it comes to China. Wondering what you're following right now that you feel is really important for us to know about.
The debt crisis in China. Just a few hours ago, a Chinese property developer, Modern Land, did not make an interest payment to bondholders. It's the fourth property developer now in about 3 weeks that has not made payments. The big one is Evergrande, which owes $305 billion. China has a debt crisis. I don't know how they're going to get past this, but this is like their 2008 crisis where they sort of reflated their economy with debt. Now they're paying the consequences of this, and it's going to be very important because the Chinese economy could actually fall apart over this.
Wow. And how would that affect our economy?
Well, of course, there would be a panic, and we've seen some of the shock from Evergrande did affect our markets. About a month ago, the Dow dropped 1,000 points on an intraday move. But really, China is less important to the global economy than most people think for a number of reasons. So we'll get by this.
Okay, Gordon, thank you so much for coming on. Great to see you in person here on the set, and thank you as always for your analysis.
Oh, well, thank you, Tracy.
Coming up, a report and analysis of what the White House is saying about a possible rise in taxes for Americans. In Pennsylvania, a former priest from the Diocese of Greensburg will be sentenced in January for a decent insult of a minor. Andrew Kowecki was removed from ministry 2 years ago when allegations were reported to authorities for his actions that happened between 2004 and 2007. All right, well, we turn now to how to pay for President Joe Biden's controversial Build Back Better agenda. That's what Democrats are still trying to figure out. That said, in the face of deep skepticism, it will be paid for. Now, even a proposal to go after billionaires' cash is hitting some snags. White House correspondent Owen Jensen reports.
As President Joe Biden keeps pushing his Build Back Better agenda, which now stands at around $1.75 trillion, that number continuously fluctuating, the big question tonight is, could billionaires possibly have to pay for a bill that's in the trillions? President Joe Biden meeting virtually this morning with the 10-member Association of Southeast Asian Nations.
Our partnership is essential in maintaining a free and open Indo-Pacific.
Meanwhile, the president is hoping to impress world leaders before his upcoming trip to Europe, that he can drive home his Build Back Better agenda. Critics slam the content and the price tag and the ways to pay for it, including a new billionaires tax. It would go after people with assets of $1 billion or more, or people making $100 million a year for 3 consecutive years, and zeroing in on tradable and non-tradable assets. Democrats say the idea could raise hundreds of billions of dollars over the course of a decade, but critics call it a harebrained idea and warn what happens if revenues dry up, and add that it could all end up in court. The White House confirming today the billionaire tax.
It is one of the ideas that is under consideration and discussion.
There is also the originally proposed hike in the corporate tax rate, more stringent IRS enforcement, and on a global scale,
a global minimum tax, something that would be on the agenda. That is a key part of the agenda at the G20. We're working to get 135 or more than that countries to agree to that.
Meanwhile, Afghanistan. Almost 2 months have gone by since the chaotic and deadly U.S. pullout. The National Security Advisor today saying they have gone after taking out ISIS-K and will continue to do so.
But it's not the end of the matter from our perspective. We will continue to identify and action targets. We believe that we have demonstrated the capability to do so.
Also tonight, the White House says it will do everything it can to advocate for press access when President Joe Biden travels to the Vatican later this week and visits with Pope Francis, but they also say they can't guarantee anything. At the White House, Owen Jensen, EWTN News Nightly.
And joining me now is Joel Griffith, Research Fellow at the Heritage Foundation. Joel, great to see you. Thanks so much for coming in today. We appreciate it.
Thank you for having me.
Absolutely. No, Owen just reported on President Biden's Build Back Better agenda. He's still pushing that. You know, there's still a lot of questions about how that's going to be paid for. How is it going to be paid for? And also, can we talk about this proposed billionaires tax?
Well, this $3.5 trillion spending package, number one, it's far more than $3.5 trillion. but it's not going to be paid for. This plan is just another component of a radical, irresponsible left-wing agenda that's being pushed forward through this administration and in Congress. And to pay for that, it's going to require higher taxes, but not just higher taxes. There's no way that we can just raise taxes enough to pay for it. There's not enough money out there. It's going to require borrowing and putting that debt on the future generation's shoulders. It's also going to require our central bank printing more money and buying that debt. And, you know, that actually leads to the possibility of higher prices, which we're all realizing right now is no fun to deal with.
Absolutely. Let's talk a little bit more about that inflation. We're seeing a lot of it. And I know recently Secretary Yellen said that this could last until 2022.
Well, this shouldn't be a surprise to her or anybody else. When you have a scenario in which government has been suppressing supply by, for a long time, keeping businesses shuttered, criminalizing business operations, putting in restrictions on manufacturing, and now putting in restrictions on energy production, while at the same time borrowing, printing, spending trillions of dollars and artificially increasing demand, that is a perfect recipe for inflation. And as long as we continue to see bureaucrats continue to mess with our supply chain system, to mess with our production system, to disincentivize people from working, we're going to continue to deal with problems like this, including the risk of higher prices, which is really diminishing the standard of living for millions of American families.
Yeah, absolutely is. I mean, you see it at the pump, you see it at the grocery store. And speaking of groceries, the holidays are right around the corner. And we just heard a report now that Thanksgiving is going to cost us a whole lot more this year.
Oh, it is going to cost a lot more, not just for the food. If you can find some of the items that you want on those shelves, you go to your grocery store, there's a lot of specialized items you can't find right now because of these disruptions. It's going to cost you a lot more to make that food, to bake that food, and it's going to cost you a lot more money this year to get home, whether you're driving or flying, because we have energy prices at multi-year highs, even historical highs in some instances. In California, for instance, where they're paying $7 per gallon of gas.
Yeah, and I hear it's not just the gas, Joel. I hear it's going to go up with natural heating gas prices as well, which is going to affect everybody.
You know, so right, natural gas prices have about doubled since last winter. That's a serious problem. And on top of that, since day one, we've had the Biden administration ensuring that future supplies are going to be limited. We've seen the Biden administration cancel the Keystone XL pipeline, which would have ensured an abundant, consistent supply of fuel coming in from Canada across our country. And we've seen the administration making it almost impossible for natural gas developers to develop on federal property. And it's hard to think back. We need to think back to just 15 years ago when we were dependent on foreign oil and we had much higher prices. And for a time, we experienced what joy it is to be independent and to have abundant fuel, fill up your car for $1.50. This administration is risking our future prosperity with these energy policies.
Joe, I want to talk about the supply chain issues. You know, we're hearing that a large part of the reason why prices are going up is because we have these cargo ships sitting off the coast of California. They can't come in. They can't get drivers to drive those products to places. And now we're hearing that Florida Governor Ron DeSantis is saying, hey, come to Florida. We'll help, help out with that. Will that help out? Do you think that that will help out in time, at least for the holidays?
It could. And this supply chain issue, this is a big problem. And the blame has been put on COVID. This is not COVID's fault. This is the fault of politicians that have made it very difficult for truckers, for instance, to work. We had many thousands of truckers retire early over the past year and a half because in California it was difficult to get a hot shower, difficult to get a bite to eat, difficult to find a place to sleep because of COVID. And at the same time, they made it almost impossible for new drivers to get CCL licenses. So we have a trucker shortage. And you've had California, in effect, declare a war on diesel trucks. So you've got these truckers go to the port in Los Angeles with their new truck, load it up, go to Arizona 4 hours away, unload to a new truck, and then turn around and drive back to the port. It's creating a bottleneck, and it's not because demand necessarily has gone through the roof. You actually have year over year, the total amount of cargo containers coming in about flat year over year in Los Angeles County. So California is largely to blame here. Florida might come to the rescue. There's surplus capacity across Florida, and the governor and the Port Authority are welcoming shippers to come to the state of Florida and alleviate this in time for Christmas, hopefully.
Okay, that's some good news, and I wanted to end on some good news. Tell us some more. Is there any positive news that can come out of all of this for us?
Well, I think a positive is that people are waking up. People are realizing that government policies, it actually impacts us. We see that with rising home prices, rising food prices, problems getting people to work, problems keeping goods on the shelves of the grocery stores. People are realizing government policy has consequences, and I hope that this will translate into Congress coming to their senses and putting the brakes on more of this fiscally irresponsible spending.
Yeah, we'll see what happens. Thanks for checking in with us. We appreciate it. Thanks so much, Joel. Up next, St. Peter's Square was the site yesterday of a different kind of healing. We'll explain. And new developments in the health of the Queen of England. The Vatican provided free health checkups for the disadvantaged in St. Peter's Square. A mobile clinic offered 9 hours of checkups for the poor and homeless near the Holy See yesterday. It is part of an initiative that will travel around Italy. According to a recent study, in 2020, the rate of heart attacks in the country tripled from the previous year. EWTN Newsroom correspondent Colm Flynn joins us now. Colm, great to see you. Can you tell us a little bit more about this temporary clinic and what it's used for?
Good evening, Tracy from Rome. Yes, I can. Well, many pilgrims and visitors to St. Peter's Square over the past number of days may have been surprised to see parked up right beside the giant Corinthian columns on the right of the square, just behind me, a mobile medical clinic. Now, many presumed it was for COVID testing, but in actual fact, this truck is a mobile cardiological clinic, and it has been placed here to offer free, life-saving cardiological checkups for those who cannot afford them, particularly the homeless who live around the Vatican. Quite a number of homeless people sleep outside the columns of the Vatican in St. Peter's Square every night, and they can find it very difficult to get to a hospital or to a doctor to have their hearts checked. So the Vatican decided to bring the clinic to them, where they can not only get a heart checkup, but a full medical as well.
That is a wonderful initiative. Can you tell us, how it came about and also who's behind it?
Of course. Well, this initiative is named The Roads of the Heart, a journey of prevention, and it is a cooperation between the Office of Papal Charities and Rome's San Carlo de Nancy Hospital. And the whole project is being coordinated by Cardinal Konrad Klawuski, who heads the Office of Papal Charities, and that's the Vatican's charitable office that operates on behalf of the Pope. And there are two main aims of this project, Tracy. One is to provide, of course, that free healthcare to the homeless, and the other is to raise general awareness on good practices for everybody in Italy and to emphasize the importance of regular heart checkups, because cardiovascular diseases are in fact the main cause of death here in Italy, accounting for about 35.8% of all deaths, with higher numbers among females, 38.8% compared to 32.5% for males. And also, the sad reality, Tracy, is that those percentages increase significantly when you're looking at those who are on the streets, especially when it's compounded by other health challenges. So this initiative here at the Vatican is hoped will save many lives.
Well, that is just staggering, those numbers there, Colm. Also, I'm wondering, have similar initiatives been carried out by the Vatican in the past like this?
Yes, they have. This is nothing new here. And in fact, the Vatican has provided temporary pop-up clinics here on the grounds of St. Peter's Square and surrounding areas over the past number of years. In fact, in 2018, a temporary clinic in the square saw over 3,500 people visit over just a short period of time, where they were able to attend and meet top doctors and nurses, of course, all for free. Tracy?
Well, Colm, thank you so much. Appreciate that. Colm Flynn, EWTN Newsroom correspondent. Thank you again.
Thank you, Tracy.
And finally tonight, we may call it working from home, but for Queen Elizabeth II, it's a resumption of royal duties from Windsor Castle. The Queen officially held virtual engagements today. Last week, health questions arose after a medically recommended rest and overnight hospital visit. Ahead on her calendar is Sunday's welcome for world leaders to the UN Climate Summit in Glasgow. And we thank you for watching tonight. For the entire EWTN News Nightly team, I'm Tracy Sable. Good night and God bless.